John chapter 14, and we begin to read at the 8th verse. Philip saith unto Jesus, Lord, show us the Father, and it sufficeth us. Jesus saith unto him, Have I been so long time with you, and yet thou hast not known me? Philip, he that has seen me has seen the Father. And how sayest thou, Show us the Father? Believest thou that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that he dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Or else believe me for the very work's sake. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, that the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go to my Father. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If ye shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. Reading to the end of the 14th verse. Those who have had children know that sometimes getting them to bed is a struggle, isn't it? But most of us have been through that somewhere along the line. And one of the things you often find is that you want to get them tucked into bed and leave them, and they say, well, don't leave, stay with me. I don't want to be alone. And we tend to say, well, it's okay. God is here with you. He'll look after you. And sometimes, as we've heard the story, that the child may say, yes, I know God is here, but I want somebody with flesh on. And that's the way Philip felt, I think. We're looking at the various disciples over this Lenten season, and looked at Andrew last week, and look at Philip this week, and probably John next week, but we'll see how the Lord leads. But in this text that passage we read, our text is verse 8, where Philip said unto Jesus, Show us the Father, and it suffices. Show us the Father. He was aware that there was a God, I'm sure, and God in heaven, and maybe way off there somewhere. Wonderful thing about God, he's, to use technical words, he's transcendent, that he's above all and everywhere, but he's also immanent in the sense that he is with us. But sometimes we can miss one or the other of that. Sometimes I think in the evangelical churches where we put a strong emphasis upon the presence of God with us, that he is with us everywhere all the time, and that's good, and I hope we ever keep that emphasis. But in doing that, sometimes we perhaps lose sight of the fact that he is the transcendent. He is the Almighty God. He is in heaven above, but he is everywhere. He's not just here. He is the great Almighty God above all. So we need to balance those two. But the trouble with some people, and I think Philip was expressing this idea here, is that as you think of the greatness of God and his majesty and him in heaven and these things, that sometimes he can sort of seem like a distant God. But God isn't distant. God is with us. And so Philip says, show us the Father. Yeah, I know he's there, and I've heard you, Jesus, talking of Father, representing him, but show us. Help me to see God in a special way. He was a very devout man. He had a depth of interest. We want to look at a few of these aspects of Philip today, and with the idea of, well, how does he fit into us? Is there somebody here that fits into that pattern of Philip? I think as we look at these 12 disciples of Jesus, each one of us can see one of them and say, well, that fits me. That's the type of person I am. And if God could use that person, then he can use me. That's the whole idea of these messages that I want to share. Because we're all different. Isn't that good? Aren't you glad that we're not all the same, Unless, of course, we're all like one particular person, I think if everybody was like me, well, that would be a tragedy, but we may not be aware of it. But we're all different. And Jesus, when he selected these 12 disciples, he selected a great variety of people. We won't touch on them all, but we'll try to touch on some of them. And so we find this man, Philip. He seems to be a quiet man. We don't hear a lot about him. I would say that he was a rather shy person. A lot of us tend to be shy. And sometimes a shy person can say, well, I can't do anything, I'm just quiet. I'd rather just sit back in the corner somewhere and work. I remember my son saying to me one time, I don't know why God called you to be a pastor. You should be back in a little corner room doing bookwork, counting or something. I was always good at math and never good at spelling and things. But so God always seems to put us in the opposite to what we're used to. But Philip seemed to be a quiet man. He didn't seem to be pushing. When Jesus found him, he looked like Jesus had to go and find Philip. He wasn't one to hear that Jesus was coming and to run out and crowd into the front of the crowd to see him. He was more the type to kind of sit back, I think. Because it says here that after Andrew and John had followed Jesus at the direction of John the Baptist, and we looked at that last week, and found out, and then Andrew went and called Peter. And verse 44 of that first chapter says, or verse 43 says, that day following, Jesus would go forth into Galilee and find us Philip and say us unto him, follow me. Jesus found Philip. Jesus is searching for people everywhere, all kinds of people, and he finds them. Some are quick to respond to him. Philip evidently did respond pretty quickly once Jesus found him. But it was Jesus that reached out to Philip and found him. And then we find Philip going to speak to his friend Nathanael. We may speak about him in a few weeks' time. But he didn't get the best of reception. Ever done that? Tried to witness to somebody, you don't get a very good reception. And so, well, what should I say? Well, he went and told Nathanael that they discovered the Messiah, and Nathanael said unto him, can there any good thing come out of Nazareth? That's quite a rebuke, isn't it? Can any good thing come out of there? Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, Philip. No, nothing comes out of Nazareth. Now, if he'd checked a little more in history, he would have found that some things did. But Nazareth was up in that northern Galilee area, and they were kind of despised by the people of Judea. And so he expresses this. Well, what did Philip say to him? Did he rebuke him for it? No. Did he get into a long discussion of theology and Jewish history and all these things to try to convince Nathanael that this was really true? No, we don't hear anything about that. All we find him saying here is, come and see. I wonder where he got that from. Well, it's the exact words that Jesus used to Andrew and John last week, wasn't it? When they said, where do you live? He says, come and see. And it's always good to use the words of Jesus, isn't it? And that's what Philip did here. He said, come and see. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to try to convince you. You just come and see, and then you'll know. And sometimes that's the best witness when we can do to people, isn't it? Invite them to come and experience Jesus. Come and see. Sometimes, if we're inviting somebody to church and they'll want to know, well, what's about your church? Or, they might have some ideas about the church. Oh, they're just a bunch of hypocrites there, Well, we can always do with one more. But something very dangerous to say that unless you know the person pretty well. But sometimes it's true. But it's not true that they're all hypocrites. But people do some of these things, and you can get into a great argument with them. But the best thing is to come and see, One thing that I've said to many people, I've found this church is such a friendly, welcoming church. That's one of our strengths here. And I've said it a number of times. I don't want to overdo it, but I want to encourage you to keep that up. That's the best thing we have going for us other than the Lord himself, That people, and I've noticed different ones that have come have said that, even if they're just kind of passing through, that they feel the warmth here and acceptance. And that's good. And so, but we can tell a person, well, it's a friendly church. Oh, yeah, we hear that all the time. Churches put that on their signs sometimes. But what do you say? Come and see. We're not ashamed of it. Come and see. See how friendly it is. But most of all, come to meet Jesus. Come and see him. See what Jesus can do for you. And so that was the approach of Philip. He was, I think, a pretty quiet type person. It's when the Greeks, we spoke last week about the Greeks coming, and Andrew and Philip, they came to Philip. He took them to Andrew. See, that's why I say he's a quiet person. He didn't say, oh, yeah, come on, I'll show you to Jesus. I'll introduce you. I'm a friend of his. No, he took them to Andrew, and I think Andrew probably said, okay, let's take them, show them to Jesus. That was the type of man. Well, some of us fit into that category pretty well, don't we? Maybe more than some other. Great thing I noticed about him, he had a great desire for God. I hope we fit into that category as well. A great desire for God. That's what our text said, didn't it? Show us the Father. He didn't say show us a lot of miracles. No, show us a great explanation about God. He says, just show us the Father. Just want to see him. Katrina sang about that, didn't you, in that song this morning? Didn't know she was going to sing that, but it felt in, that we shall see him. See Jesus. That's the desire of Philip, to see God. He wasn't looking for a lot for himself. He wasn't seeking a fame or fortune. A couple of the other disciples said, well, we're following you, and when we get to heaven, we want to sit one on each side of you. We want those choice seats up there, right beside you. Kind of a famous place to be, wouldn't it? But Philip didn't say, I want a special place with you in heaven. He just wanted to see God. He wasn't looking for some sort of fortune for himself. Earlier in this chapter, Jesus said that he's going to prepare a mansion for us. And King James Version, of course, uses that phrase, in my Father's house are many mansions. And the modern translations usually say, in my Father's house are many rooms, or something like that. And I've heard people get upset about that. Well, I don't want just a room there. Well, I don't care. I don't need a mansion. I don't need a mansion here. I don't think I need a mansion up there. I'll just take whatever God gives me, whether it's a room or apartment or a tent or a cottage. Why should I care, you know? Of course, that talks about the mansion coming, but there's another old camp meeting song that speaks about a cabin in the corner of glory land. Well, whatever it might happen to be. Some might remember that song. That goes way back. But Philip wasn't looking for something special. He just wanted to see God. Why do you want to get to heaven? Find a mansion? All the good things? Be no tears there? No danger? No problems? Well, that's the way it seems to be painted in Revelation, and that's good. And we have a lot to look forward to in going to heaven, don't we? But is that what we're looking forward? Or is it to see God? Face to face with God, my Savior. What a glory that would be. And that seemed to be Philip's thinking. He was a very devoted man. He said, I just want to see God. Show us the Father, and that will satisfy us. We're in a very unsatisfied generation, aren't we? People are wanting more and more and enjoying it less and less, you know. Seems to me that the bigger the person's house is, the less time they spend in it, you know. Trying to think of the country singer a number of years ago, I can't think of his name, but sang about that love grows best in little houses. And I thought that's so true, you know. There's knowing people that maybe start out in a little cramped house, and that song speaks of it, you know, where you kind of bump against each other as you're going back and forth. But love grows there. And sometimes people have, and then they've got into bigger places, and guess it costs more to keep it up, and they're out so much. But sometimes it's the little things. Now, I'm not pleading for little things, but what do we want at heaven? Do we really want God more than anything else? That was Philip speaking. That's how Jesus was able to use Philip. He only wanted to see God. I think he would have loved that chorus that we sometimes sing that, I better read it or I'll mess it up. But it says, more of you, more of you. I've had all but what I need, just more of you. Of things I've had my fill, and yet I hunger still. Empty and bare, Lord, hear my prayer for more of you. Yes, more of you, more of God. That was Philip's cry. He just wanted more of God. Show us the Father. Never mind all the miracles and the other things. They're all good. They're all in their place, but I just want more of you. I just want to see the Father. What would satisfy you? Just to see the Father? Just to be with Him? Family means so much. Our earthly families do. But oh, how about our heavenly family? The family of God. We like to sing that song, don't we? So glad I'm a part of the family of God. That was Philip's idea. He wanted to see the Father. He wanted to be part of that family. Someone with that type of desire, Jesus said, I can use that man. I can use that person that has their eyes set on God, that they want to see the Father more than anything else. That was Philip. He was also an approachable man. It's good to be approachable. Some people kind of have a fence around them, you know. sometimes we can kind of fence ourselves off from others. Church can do that. I had a bit of controversy at one of my churches way back that when I went there, a few of the people, not too many of them, but a few of them thought they should put a big fence around the parking lot because people were using it sometimes during the week, just neighbors and whatnot. And they thought we should put a fence around and keep these people out and just open it on Sunday, you know. And I said, oh, we're saying to the community, we're hiding back here, you know. Wait, well, quite a, I don't know, shouldn't say controversy, I guess, but difference of opinion on that. I think it should be wide open. I'm glad here we don't have any fence around, you know. Sometimes when I see a skidoo go across our lot here, I think that maybe, but it's wide open. It's open for everybody. And as individuals, we need to be open, approachable, that people can come to us, that there isn't kind of a bubble around us. Have you ever seen this, what do you call it, bubble soccer game play? I know they've done that up at camp, you know, where people get in this big bubble and they try to run around. Of course, you bump each other and they end up upside down and who knows what else. But I think of that person inside, you know, you can't get to the person. They're inside this bubble. Well, some people seem to live that way, as if they're in a bubble, and if they get near anybody, it kind of pushes them off before they can get touched. But it's good to be approachable. Now, I know that we have different personalities. There are some people that are very approachable. They just seem to attract people. I'm thinking of one, well, I'll say the name, Bob Votary. Some of you know him well. Yeah. Everybody is attracted to Bob. Reverend Votary, Bishop Votary, whatever. It doesn't matter whether it's young children or the senior citizens, anybody in between, whether they're Christians or not, there's something about Bob that people are just attracted to. And his wife said one day, he thinks you have a sign across your forehead, speak to me. He's just got that personality. And, is it okay to envy something? If I can, I'd envy it. That's a wonderful thing, and because he uses it to the benefit of God. But some people are like that, but some people are the opposite. And we can't always change our personality, but we can work on it, can't we? To try to be more approachable, that people can feel comfortable in our presence. And I think Philip was that type of person. Remember, the Greeks came to Philip. I don't know how many of the disciples were around, but there must have been something about Philip that, in his quiet way, that they said, here's a man that we can speak to. And they came to Philip and said, we want to see Jesus. They had confidence that they'd get a reception from him. And they did. And, of course, he took them to Andrew, and they went to see Jesus. Simple person that does that, isn't it? No self-righteousness about it. People that are self-righteous just turn others off, don't they? We want to be righteous with the robe of righteousness of God, but not self-righteous. There's a big difference, isn't there? And I think Philip was that. He wasn't self-righteous. He was approachable. He was just kind of an ordinary person that people could come to. And God needs that type of person, doesn't he? We should be people that others can come to with their needs. I don't mean just people looking for a handout, but people with their needs that they can come to. I think all of us, if we say, I don't want to get your mind off this message, but I think all of us can think of certain people that if I had a need, I could go to that person. That would be the person. If I needed prayer, that's the person I'd go to for prayer. Might be a lot of other Christians, but that's the person I'd really call on. Or if I needed help with something, that certain people I can depend on. I get amused with these people that on Facebook nowadays, and I don't understand Facebook, but however it works, I hear people saying, I've got 1,000 or 1,500 friends on Facebook. And I think to myself, how many of them could you call on in a time of need? You know? Probably not very many. But it's one or two people that we know, hopefully a few more, that we could call on in that time of need. Are we that type of people? I think that's what Philip was. He wasn't out there in the front line. He wasn't one that was noticed a lot. We don't hear very much about him. But it seemed that people could come to him, approach him. Oh, Lord, help us to be approachable, that we'll be available for people to call upon in their time of need. And that by God's help, we'll be able to help them. God needs Philips, not just by name, but men, women of devotion. People can come to them and to find help, to point them to Jesus. He needs those people. May we be some of them.